following this growing case up in Boston, Massachusetts. It's really bizarre. Tiny Anne Walsh, she was a European, Eastern European by birth. She was a tiny woman, 5 foot 2 inches, 115 pounds, vanished from the face of the earth the day after New Year's. Um, on New Year's night, her husband, Brian, who was under house arrest at the time for selling fake Andy Warhol paintings, those paintings are worth, of course, millions of dollars. He invited a family friend over, Jem Mutlu, for Mutlu, for New Year's Eve dinner. It was a big dinner. Everyone was there. They had fun. He left at around 1:30 in the morning. According to what the husband told the police, Anna had an early flight from Boston to Washington. She commuted. She worked in D.C. part-time. She was from the D.C. area originally. She had an early flight on January 1, but she never boarded the plane. Investigators believe she left home, this is according to what the husband, in the early morning, New Year's Day, likely 4 or 5 in the morning. And if that's true, the family was sleeping at the time. The flight to D.C. was originally booked by her for January 3rd, but police say she left early for, according to the husband, some type of emergency at work. She's a highly paid real estate executive um, who worked in an office. I can't imagine investment really. I can't understand what sort of emergency that would be on a national holiday. But anyway, the office was closed. No one at the office knew anything about any emergency. They didn't expect to see Anna until Wednesday, 2 days later. Anna's phone was shut off on New Year's Day, and after that, this is a woman who virtually lived on the computer and on her iPad and on her phone. No digital footprint exists after that day. 72 hours are unaccounted for between the time she was last seen, New Year's night, 1:30 in the morning, and the day she was reported missing. In an interview with police, Brian Walsh, he failed to mention that on January 2, he had gone to a Home Depot in violation of his probation. He's not supposed to leave the house to buy $450 in cleaning supplies. The cameras inside the store at the Home Depot have him wearing a black surgical mask. Well, a lot of people are wearing masks these days. Blue surgical gloves. I don't know. And he paid in cash. The argument is he's going to be many people have accused him of probably murdering this woman, his wife. But if that's the case, why did he have to go out and buy cleaning supplies? I should think that if you're planning to murder someone, you'd already have that stuff ready and waiting, unless, of course, this was some sort of a spur of the moment murder, if in fact she was murdered at all. He has not been accused of that. Anyway, it was one of several glaring omissions and inconsistencies he gave to police. That same day, this is January 2, he conducted internet searches for, listen to this, quote, how to dispose of a 115-pound woman's body and, quote, how to dismember a female body. Wow. His cell phone data allegedly revealed he had traveled to several areas, Brockton and Abington, Massachusetts, not close to the home. And that, again, is in violation of his parole. Ana Walsh's employer, Tishman Spear, reported her missing to the Cohasset police. Brian reported her missing shortly afterwards in the same day. The theory would be that the employers called and said, she's not here, we're concerned, we're going to call the Cohasset police and say she's missing. And Brian then thought, well, I guess I should do that as well. So on Friday, January 6th and Saturday, January 7th, things are getting weird. The Massachusetts State Police are there with the Cohasset police at the family home. They're going through the place with a fine-tooth comb. They find blood in the basement on the carpet. A report reads blood found in basement area as well as knife, which contains some blood. Part of the knife was damaged. Uh, a task force reviewed footage to verify. This is when they reviewed the footage to see where he said he was, and he was in none of the places he said he was. And that's when they found out about his going to buy these $450 worth of cleaning supplies. Anyway, at that point, investigators went out and they went through the pool, the family pool in the backyard, and then they came back Saturday. They repeated the entire search again. On Sunday, the police arrested Brian and charged him with misleading the investigation. Nobody knows exactly or specifically what he said or didn't say to mislead the investigation. That's still private. He was held on a $500,000 cash bond. He made that. He's arraigned on Monday the 9th. He pled not guilty and he was released. So on the 10th, investigators found trash bags with blood, a hatchet, and a hacksaw in the Peabody. Peabody is a town. Transfer station, which is about 45 miles north of the Walshes' home. Police won't reveal if there's a correlation between the murder and what they found. So on Friday, 20 troopers and members of a special emergency response team, a dog unit, search and rescue dog unit, K-9 team, State Air Force, Police Air Force, searched the wooded area near the home. They found nothing. They came back and searched it again. State police divers were also looking in streams and pools around the area. No results. The ground search was called off. They just had no further point in continuing that. So this is an odd marriage. In 2014, now Ana is living down in D.C. where she was working. Brian and her were dating or whatever. He called her up and he threatened to kill her. This is in 2014 before they were married, and he's going to kill her friend as well. I don't know who the friend was. So she filed a complaint to have him arrested. They locked him up, but she refused to cooperate and they dropped the case. They married the following year. Ana moved from D.C. to Cohasset, which is about 20 miles southeast of Boston. The couple, southeast. The couple eventually had 3 kids, and Ana continued to work as a high-placed real estate executive in D.C. She commuted. Brian, this guy's got problems. He was accused of destroying his father's will in 2018. His father was a famous neurologist. After he was cut out of his father's estate, the father and the son were estranged. Those things happened for years. After Brian, quote, allegedly absconded with almost $1 million from his father's home. This apparently was his father's retirement money. Brian disappeared and his father was left to continue working past the age at which he had wished to retire, as a significant amount of his savings were stolen by his son, according to an affidavit. Dr. Thomas Moorcroft Walsh left his son, that's the father, quote, my best wishes, but nothing else. You've already been paid. Dr. Walsh, his longtime friend who was a beneficiary in the will, later described in a court document how he had, quote, witnessed firsthand that Brian, the son, what Brian was capable of. I saw Brian attempt to smuggle out antiques from China. When Brian was confronted, he picked up a stanchion, like a little metal pole, and literally attempted to kill 4 or 5 guards that had come to talk to him about the crime. Brian is not only a sociopath, but he is a very, very angry and physically violent person, end quote. Brian Walsh allegedly destroyed his father's will and then had himself appointed as the estate's representative. There was already an estate representative in place. It was a nephew. And the nephew, who knows where he was, found out later his uncle had, the doctor had died, and he found out later, after all was said and done, that Brian had hijacked the will and appointed himself estate representative. Brian then drained $100,000 from his father's bank account. He listed his father's house for sale. He held what was called a spectacular oceanfront estate sale. Federal prosecutors charged that in the court hearings. He allegedly hawked, this is again prosecutors talking, paintings by Miro, Dali, Oriental rugs, expensive glasses, Asian arts, potteries, and even a car. 2 years later, in April 2021, Brian pled guilty to 1 count of wire fraud, interstate transportation for a scheme to defraud, possession of coveted goods, unlawful monetary transaction for selling a pair of fake Andy Warhol paintings on eBay for $80,000 to a dealer in California, and then selling the same product again to another buyer in France for $145,000. He was selling, just to be clear on this, fake paintings, Warhol paintings. They weren't actually the real thing. The forgeries were copies uh, taken from originals, obviously, that a friend of his in college had somehow gotten. And he asked Brian to help him sell them. Brian said, sure. And the friend said, just make sure you tell people they're fake. So he sold these things, didn't tell people they were fake, and he pocketed all the money and cheated his friend, basically. Anyway, according to the U.S. Attorney, Assistant Attorney up in Boston, the motive for these frauds was to sustain a lavish lifestyle. And after Brian received $145,000 payment, he and his wife went shopping at Prada. So the U.S. District Attorney was about to hand Brian a no plea jail term when the prosecutors revealed that Brian had embezzled his father's estate. Brian had failed to list the sale of his father's property and other assets that he had before the sentencing. So that included more than $600,000 from his mother since 2018, since his arrest of stealing his father's assets. So he had, in other words, he had 600 grand from his mother. He didn't tell the court about because the court was taking everything back to pay these people. And anyway, the omission is particularly striking. The prosecutor wrote, given his wife benefited from the fraud here, which took place before they were married but were together. So what he did was he transferred $115,000 directly to Anna from funds that he stole from people, right? The judge ordered a trial to determine whether Brian misrepresented his assets, misappropriated his money from his father's estate, and whether it was a criminal act in doing that, whether he knew it was a criminal act. Brian has not been criminally charged for the alleged theft from his father's late estate. So that's still pending, all that junk. While all this is going on, Anna, there was some, I'm going to show you a photo. Some suspected she had been beaten up shortly before she wrote a letter, beaten up by him, by her husband, before she wrote a letter on behalf of her husband to the judge asking him not to jail her husband. She said he was a good man. He has had a deep impact on our lives. She wrote, when I met Brian, I witnessed his kindness and generosity on many occasions. However, I also saw the level of suffering in his life. He was afraid of relationships and for years did not allow anyone to get close to him, including me. He was clearly in doubt that he could be loved or for who he truly was. Brian has been deeply affected by his childhood and relationships with his parents. He was taught to lie and hide. He was told that he was a loser, that his parents should not have had him, that he had no chances of making a determining factor on how he showed up for himself and for others in the past. So that's what we know so far. The police haven't released much information, and actually, this case has sort of gone silent for about a week. But I will keep you posted.